You guys, Trump says that the war with Iran is over, but in reality, there is no actual deal yet. This one is getting maddening. We have a supposed MOU with a 60-day promise to negotiate the actual deal, but stalling is the one thing that Iran does better than anyone else on earth. Plus, I think it is super weird that we're not getting any real details on what's actually in the MOU. We're being told by JD Vance that details are being withheld specifically at the request of Pakistan and Qatar. Hear it straight from the man.
Qataris and the Pakistanis have been mediating this entire negotiation with the Iranians, and they've asked us effectively to sequence the way that we roll this out. I frankly don't understand it. We'd be happy to release the agreement today or tomorrow. It doesn't make sense. We may release it as late as Friday, but fundamentally in the grand scheme of things, that doesn't matter, because whether it's tomorrow, whether it's Friday, people are going to see what's in this agreement very soon. Friday, of course, is the formal signing ceremony and the kickoff of these negotiations, and that's when they've asked us to delay it. We're trying to push that forward. But look, the agreement's actually very simple. It says, 1, Iran can't have a nuclear weapon. 2, the Straits of Hormuz are open. And number 3, there are all of these benefits contemplated that the Iranians can get if they behave. If they stop developing terrorism, if they stop funding terrorism, if they stop supporting the rebuilding of the nuclear arms program, they actually can get some real benefits. If they don't do any of that stuff, they don't get anything. And I think that's where a lot of the misunderstandings come from, is you've got Iranian propagandists out there saying, well, we get all these things. And they leave out the fact that they only get those things if they fundamentally transform themselves as a country.
So right now, the thing that I have a big beef with is by the U.S. remaining silent, they're allowing the Iranians to control the narrative on this at a time where that is the absolute last thing you want to do, because everybody is so suspicious of what is going to be on this MOU. And I think rightly so. I think this is largely turning into a war of propaganda. It does not feel like we are negotiating from a position of strength. Right now, the thing everybody is asking themselves is, if you've got a good deal, why are you hiding the details? And I think that's exactly right. I think that there's a ton of stuff leaking out that if you were trying to save it for some big announcement to try to get a win just off the momentum of what is in the deal, that has already gone. So you would try to get out ahead of all the things that are leaking. So the fact that they're not trying to get out ahead of all the things that they're leaking, and they still sent JD Vance on a PR press tour, tells me that whatever is going to be on this thing is not something that will be easily spun as a win for the US. Now, of course, we can wait a couple days for the details. That really isn't the big deal. But the fact that they're withholding the details tells me that either all of this is still up in the air, which I would like to remind everybody is a very likely outcome, that nothing has actually been settled on, or that Americans are not going to like the detail. One of those two things is almost certainly true. And if we were operating from a position of strength, Iran would have to comply first before getting the rewards. But in reality, it sounds like we are so desperate to get a deal that opens the Strait of Hormuz and gets the oil flowing again, that we're happy to lead with sanctions relief first and then hope that Iran upholds their end of the bargain. Say what you will, there is one consistent refrain about what Iran is like from a negotiating standpoint, and it is that they will drag out the clock. So Trump has been beating the drum that time is on our side. That does not appear to be the case. It really does look like Iran is a champion at running the clock down, and that serves them, because if they can push this off and get closer to the midterms, they get put in a stronger and stronger position. So we may have broken their military, but we certainly have not removed enough of their leverage to stop them from closing the Strait of Hormuz, which many people have noted may be a more effective weapon for them than a nuclear weapon. Just the ability that's now been tested and proven to be true that they can shut down the Strait of Hormuz with asymmetric warfare. So right now, I would say Iran is poised to get sanctions relief immediately, control over the strait, and American willingness to authorize this mystery $300 billion that are supposedly outside investments to rebuild Iran. And one thing that JD Vance and Trump have been very clear on, whether it ends up being true or not, they have been very consistent in their messaging that Iran is not going to get a single red cent of US taxpayer dollars, that this is about the US authorizing other countries to go in and invest in Iran and build. And Trump said, as of right now, countries like, let's say, the UAE are not able to do that. They would have to go seek permission from the US. And so what the US supposedly is promising with this is that, hey, we'll let them do that if they want to do it, if you guys are behaving yourselves. Now, we'll see if that ends up being true, because Iran complying with the terms of this mystery deal, to me, is just a never-ending sequence of question marks. Oh, and by the way, the nuclear deal, the thing that we are supposedly in this for, the whole purpose, that is going to be negotiated later. That's so wild. If I'm Iran, I'm just going to drag this out as long as I can to get into the midterm campaigning period, at which point I know Trump is going to be at his weakness. I then give Hezbollah the nod to hit Israel. And then when Israel takes the bait and strikes back, which they will almost certainly do, because they're included in this deal, even though the US did not get their permission, I, as Iran, am going to go, hey, that was a violation. And so I'm going to back out of this. Thank you for giving me, at that point, 60, 90. Can they drag this out to 120 days of sanctions relief, of letting me ship oil and just rebuild my military, rebuild my stockpiles, resupply all of my proxies? That is, I think, a very simple, straightforward winning scenario for the home team that has proven that they can run the clock down. So if they can get Trump into late summer, early fall, when he's really going to be on the campaign trail for the midterms, he's really going to need things to be coming together economically. Will he really have the stomach to relaunch an attack to force them back to the negotiating table? Or is he going to try to just spin something in terms of rhetoric to make it seem like, no, we're still in control, we're still winning this thing, all the while Iran goes back to doing what they were doing under the JCPOA, which is, even though we told you we weren't going to build our nuclear arsenal, we are doing exactly that. And from my read, we'll see in the fullness of time, but from my read, this is going to put a ton of money in their pocket, far more money than was put in their pocket by previous administrations. So the fact that he would bang on for as long as he did about, we gave them money, we funded it, and that made this terrible deal, and we basically have done this to ourselves, there is a potential that this becomes that times 10. So it's all going to hinge on this supposed them behaving, and that things are only doled out as they show a willingness to get in line with the terms of a mystery deal that nobody's actually laying out on paper. It's all wild. So we'll see what ends up playing out, but I think that the waiting game is on Iran's side, not the US's.
Let's jump back to J.D. Vance on the 5, and he talks about the stipulations that are required for them to get access to that money.
Yeah, so just to literally address a couple of things, because I think you're making the same mistake, unfortunately, that a lot of the Iranian propagandists make when they talk about this,
like
which
the
is
Wall Street Journal?
They talk about the benefits to the Iranians without any of the things the Iranians would have to give up and have to change in order to get those benefits. So you mentioned a $300 billion fund. I got to be very clear about this. Not a single cent of American money under any circumstance, no matter what the Iranians do, goes to Iran. Not a single cent of American money.
Other money.
Well, here's what this says. This says, for example, let's say that the United Arab Emirates, who have been a great ally, let's say they want to invest in a power plant in Iran. What this deal provides is that if the Iranians have done everything we require them to do, then we will allow the United Arab Emirates to do that. Because they can't do that right now without American approval. So we're fundamentally saying if the Iranians transform how they interact with the world, we will transform how the world economy interacts with Iran. But if they don't do any of that stuff, they don't get any of these benefits.
Here's the thing. All right, I'll take the flip side for a second and say, okay, I have said from the beginning of time that the real win is always going to be to flip people over into thinking economically. If you want Israel-Palestine to end, you've got to get Palestine thinking about their economic future, where it's like, all right, cool, we're just heads down, we're going to build industry, stop fucking us up, we'll show signs of good faith. All we care about is that our lives a year from now are economically better than they are today, that our kids' lives are better economically 20 years from now than they are today. That's our thing. I know you guys aren't going to trust us, but just give us a little bit of space, let us cook, and then, as we earn that trust, start letting us bring more things in as we earn more trust, blah, blah, blah. Same idea here. Dear Iran, you guys, for theocratic reasons, you have ejected yourself out of the global economy. Let's plug you back in. Let's see you do the same things that the other Arab nations are doing. Let's see you have some sort of religious reformation where you guys are becoming more secular. You're giving your people more freedoms. You're not killing your citizens anymore. We see that you're offering more freedoms. We see that you're normalizing relationships with Israel. We see that you're not pursuing a nuclear plan. We see that you're not putting all the money in the pockets of your proxies and having them attack Israel, all of that. And hey, you guys will become 10 times wealthier than you are today because we're going to give you this increasing sanctions relief and you're going to be able to just keep shipping your oil, but on the open market. So instead of having to sell at a discount effectively only to China, now let the world compete for your oil. It's going to be amazing. If they can do that, it would be transformational. I just don't see what they see to make them believe that that's actually what's going to happen. And if you even listen to the rhetoric coming directly out of Iran's mouth, they're not saying any of those things. So you've got the US being like, trust me, bro, trust me, like these guys are going to normalize. You've got Iran showing no signs that that's actually true. And if they could, yes, it would be incredible. And if they could, I would be all for them saying, UAE, if you want to invest in these guys, if you trust in them, like do your thing. Not sending US dollars, I think is going to be incredibly important. Otherwise, people here are rightly going to freak the fuck out. They're going to have to ground us in something tangible because man, I can't believe they've convinced themselves.
$300 billion is 300 billion reasons for them to kind of act up, or you think that
Iran, okay, this is where I think Trump has gone wrong is he's thinking 300 billion would get me to act some kind of way. I'll dance like a good monkey, right? And so this is where I go, now he's talking about Qatar, which their people have reasons to not love Qatar's stance on human rights and things like that. So, leave that as an open door. But Qatar's talking about, like, I've seen figures as high as $19 trillion of investments being made in the US. Now, if you put that together, Trump's mental model, this is me mind reading, but I think everyone will be pretty comfortable with this. Trump's mental model of $300 billion gets you to go, oh yeah, like, in what way would you like me to dance? How high would you like me to jump? Qatar is going to expect the same thing. I would like you to jump this high. I would like you to do these things. So you don't get $19 trillion for free. You don't get $19 trillion. It's so absurd. But like, even if somehow magically we were to believe that over some 50-year period, we're going to get $19 trillion of investment from Qatar, that's going to come with a whole lot of stipulations. That's Trump's mentality. That's the Western mentality largely. But when you look at a theocratic regime that, if we can believe, like, okay, reports are that 42,000 civilians were killed by Iran during the protest uprising. Cut that in half. Cut it by 75%. It's still an insane amount of your own people to kill. So you've got people who will literally just put a gun to your head, pull the trigger and shoot you, which we can model out with China, which is the nicest of the groups of people that killed their own people en masse. And then we're like, okay, yeah, we should probably stop doing this. Let's think economically. They still rule with an iron fist. So I am not expecting that Iran having the ability to get to $300 billion in investments from surrounding areas gets them to stop being a theocratic regime. The only thing that stops them from being a theocratic regime is that the will of the people rises up so hard and so fast that they have no ability to stop them. And given that it's an unarmed populace, I don't see that happening. There are historical examples where a government legitimately does more or less step aside non-violently. It almost never happens. You almost always have to kill them. So I don't think it will work if it is offered first and then there's an expectation that, okay, I just gave you 10 billion. Now let's see if you're good. And then I'll give you 10 billion more. I don't think that will work at all because, as we've seen with like Palestine, they build military installations with the money. They don't build roads, houses, schools. It's all much more survival of the regime oriented. And as history, man, the more I read about history, the more I realize that a population is just so easy to psychologically control. You oftentimes don't even have to bring out the guns. You just lie to them over and over and over and over and over and over and over. For instance, the US ran a brilliant campaign, which when they occupied Japan, they wanted to be able to leverage the emperor as like an emissary of God to say what we're doing with the US is the right thing so that the Japanese would get in line. And they did. It's crazy. They could have been like, war criminal, you're going to be executed or exiled, or you have to renounce your throne or whatever. But instead they were like, no, keep your position because we're going to need to puppeteer you every now and then. Like, we need your people to get on board with this. And it worked. And it worked really well, by the way. Japan is a wonderland. but it is wild how easy we are to manipulate. It's really wild, man. So yes, I would expect that to play out far more, that you're going to get a psychological campaign run on the Iranian people to make them hate the West, to show we are strong and we survived all of this and we're going to see you guys to the other side of this, and endless propaganda aimed at young kids. And you'll get another generation that's like, yeah, this is what I want.
One thing that we haven't talked about with this deal is that it's contingent on Lebanon and Israel playing fair. There's reports that Israel won't cede the land that they took. There's reports that Israel has been iced out of the negotiation table. What's kind of your read on how long this agreement would hold up, looking through the lens of Israel, Lebanon, and Hezbollah?
Lebanon, unfortunately, is probably a hostage in all of this. And this is really a question of Iran via the proxy of Hezbollah going after Israel. And I think there it's completely untenable. So it will just be a question of what is their motivation. So does Iran want to poke at Israel because they are so religiously offended, and just pride, but the religious thing I think is just such a wild accelerant. Are they so offended that Israel is occupying territory in Lebanon that they just cannot help themselves but launch an attack, at which point Israel will strike back? And then they just are basically taking the excuse to be like, yeah, we tried, but they just wouldn't leave. We can't control Hezbollah. That'll be their official message. And so we told Israel that if they struck back, and they may even say I think they have to, well, we don't know what the MOU actually says. My gut is it's going to say that Israel needs to back out of Lebanon. And so that's going to be a major sticking point. And so if I'm Iran and I take a somewhat cynical read of the whole thing, I go, Iran is using that as the trump card that they will play whenever they want to say, see, this Israel, you don't have Israel on a leash. They're the bad guys. We're never going to tell Hezbollah that they have to back off when they're being occupied by this foreign invader who's trying to run the Greater Israel Project. They know that the West is completely turned on Israel. And so they'll be like, yep, Israel bad, us good. You guys fucked this up. And now we're going to go back to doing our thing. And we know two things. One, you're not going to attack us during midterms. Two, you're almost certainly going to lose in the midterms, even just historically. You're going to lose. Forget that you've stepped on your own dick and caused a complete fucking mess. You always lose. I mean, it's like such a small handful of times that a president's been able to actually keep the Congress and the Senate. So you're going to be impeached. You probably won't be convicted because you probably won't lose the Senate, but you're going to lose the House. You'll be impeached. You're not going to be able to get any legislation through. So you're going to be even more inert than you are now in terms of being able to stop us. But
I feel like he didn't need congressional approval to go into a war this time. So he didn't need Congress. He sidestepped the House. So him losing the midterms, I don't know if that necessarily would cut off his ability to fight in Iran.
Totally. But now think about what he's learned by what he just did. So he knows, bombing them didn't work. And so now the only algorithm Trump could be running in his brain is I'll have to be even more escalatory. And so he certainly can, like from an EO perspective, start another 60-day clock and see if Congress can basically stop him. They won't be able to stop him from doing immediate short-term strikes like he has done so far. They'll certainly try. Trump will now know that if he's actually going to get control of the Strait, he's got to go all the way. And all the way, and it's just nothing but endless question marks in terms of how many lives would be lost. The U.S. does not have the stomach for that. And so right now, he has leverage in a more economic sense of Iran really is in this weakened position that if Trump could drag this out, and if Trump really didn't want to get a deal done ASAP, because remember, you don't have deaths happening on a daily basis right now. So from that perspective, Trump shouldn't have urgency. So the urgency that Trump feels is economic on our side. It's all of our allies, maybe mostly even China, being like, hey, motherfucker, I haven't sent any military vessels over there to escort my ships through out of courtesy. I'm giving you time to get this done. But we are on a real ticking clock from a strategic petroleum reserve perspective. You're not going to that up. I'm just telling you right now. And so I'm not going to shoot any missiles at you, but I am going to bring some really big aggressive ships and make sure that my oil gets out. You can do what the fuck you want with everybody else's oil, but I'm getting mine. Remember, 90% of Iranian oil is Chinese. Now, I'm mind reading here. I don't know that that's true, but Trump tipped his hand a little bit when he said Xi has been a real gentleman and hasn't sent over any warships, which tells you that conversation has been had. So clearly it's come up. And so at that point, you know, Trump is on a ticking clock from the rest of the world perspective. So even if Congress can't shut him down, there isn't the escalatory path that he wants you to believe that there is. And if he starts releasing money and sanctions, they're going to build themselves a war chest so that they can survive an economic battle that lasts for a long time. This is basically like, take a filmmaker who maybe they only do a movie once every 5 years, but when they do that movie, they make $20 million. And so it's like, yeah, don't act like you're going to make $20 million a year, but $20 million is a lot for an individual, and however many billions they end up getting flooded back into their system. And if they can run oil for 90 days, 120 days while they stall for time, holy shit. Like, they can clock a lot of dollars, because it basically is all that pent up demand goes out. People refill their strategic petroleum reserves. So like, yeah, they can count on being able to stockpile a ton of fucking money. So we get put in a weaker position because now Iran has rebuilt the reserves and they can once again withstand a really long, protracted economic war. So from that perspective, I think that if Trump gives up the leverage that he has now, that it becomes a non-starter. Because what is he going to do? Like, re-bomb the same things again? Or is he going to escalate to civilian infrastructure? It's not a good position.
Yeah, he can finally take Carg Island, right? That was the thing that we talked about.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Tom Bilyeu Show. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe so you never miss one of these in the future. And if you want to catch us live, you can join us Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 7 a.m. Pacific time. I hope to see you there.